Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk about the latest atrocity committed in the name of Beethoven. I speak of the long-awaited, much-anticipated Teodor Currentzis Beethoven Symphony No. 7. As you can see, I am wearing the scarf of irredeemable chutzpah, for although Currentzis is a young conductor, really just beginning his career, he has the attitude, the hubris, the pretentiousness, and the pomposity of a Meister, podium master who's been around so long he no longer has any sense of self-criticism or ability to understand that what he's doing is either appropriate or not appropriate or total crap. I mean, that's kind of sad when you have somebody that young, but here we are, and so he gets the scarf of irredeemable chutzpah right from the beginning. So we wear the scarf. And now let's talk about the performance. Now, because this is a Currentzis recording, he has to talk, because the only thing he likes better than conducting poorly is talking long-windedly. And let us see what he has to say about Beethoven's Seventh. Well, look at the first paragraph of the notes. Here we go. Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, quote, has the most perfect form ever achieved in a symphony, according to Teodor Currentzis. Quote, every note has its proper place in the absolute symmetry. Oh yes, it's symmetrical, unquote. When visiting the Parthenon and studying the colonnades, the first composer that sprang to his mind, that's Currentzis, was Beethoven. Okay, quote, he knew the great works of Greek tragedy, but as a genius, he also had a profound and instinctive understanding of classical architecture, unquote. Yeah, okay. Analyzing and perfecting the rhythmic grammar of the Seventh, Currentzis had a distinct aim in mind. Get this one, folks. Quote, I want an architecture that uncovers spirituality, not a spiritual approach that tries to find the architecture, unquote. Now, if that doesn't get the bloviating bullshit award for 2021, or maybe of all time, I have no idea what does. I mean, I could go on with this. I mean, there are more and more quotations. Oh, wait a minute. There's the name-dropping part. I love the name-dropping part where he talks about, like, more famous philosophers and people like that. Let's see. Oh, let's see what we're talking about here. Well, where's the part where he drops all the names? Oh, my God, because he has to prove to us how smart he is. Well, Wagner is in here, and Weber is in here. And let's see, wait a minute, Greek and Latin poetry, and Homer. Oh, look, here's Homer, and Goethe, and Schiller, and oh my, isn't that marvelous? And let's look at just the conclusion here, shall we? Because it really, there's no point in making it more tedious than it needs to be. Quote, what all the Beethoven symphonies have in common, concludes Currentzis, is the bond between beauty and spirit. Well, there's an original thought, huh? It's beauty. Oh, wait a minute. Is beauty an enemy of spirit? Oh, there's the rhetorical question. Is spirit irrelevant to beauty? Another rhetorical question. Or is there a corridor that connects these two prodigious forces? For me, Beethoven answers these questions with his music. No, actually, he did it by telegram, but that's another issue. His answer is like the ancient Greek temples with Christian churches built on top of them. The ancient beauty of the temple matches the spirituality of Christian love, unquote. Oh, God! I mean, seriously? Seriously, Mr. Currentzis, do you really believe that crap? Oh, my God. Anyway, that's a taste. That's a taste. You just to get us started, right? Now let's talk about why the performance, which has nothing to do with any of this nonsense is so wretched. As usual with Currentzis, the most notable emotional quality of his performance is fear. Fear of Beethoven, fear of losing control, fear of not sounding profound and original, and the desperate necessity to do something different, which means usually doing something inappropriate. Because most of the obvious ways to do something different with Beethoven, like phrasing and balance and, tempo, those have kind of been done. So in order to really stand out, you have to do something incredibly inappropriate, something that Beethoven probably didn't write and didn't want. So let's begin at the beginning. You note right away with the woodwind solos in the first movement introduction that every phrase ends in a diminuendo. That's irritating. That's really irritating because Beethoven didn't write those. But there you go. They all end in diminuendi, and that's going to become a mannerism throughout the performance, something that becomes so predictable. I guess that's part of the architecture, repeating elements of form. Make a diminuendo at the end of every phrase. Why don't you? Now, once the first movement gets going, it's actually not too bad for a while. And the reason, of course, is because the rhythm is just so repetitive and relentless. It's just going bump-a-dum, 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 bump. How much can you do with that, right? But what you do notice is there aren't enough horns. Who wants a Beethoven 7th with horns that aren't really going for it? But no, they're all kind of blended into the texture, which is kind of thick, which is kind of unpleasant. But that's all right. The first movement, Currentzis kind of gets through. He really does. It has energy. It has propulsion. It has very careful rhythmic detailing. It's too tightly held, like most of what Currentzis does. It has this iron, tight-fisted control everywhere. Just when Beethoven wants to explode, it's so anal retentive. That's the only word for it, really. But the allegretto. The allegretto. It's possibly the worst performance of the allegretto that has ever been recorded, and it's the most original. Now, we all know that opening theme is supposed to be played tenuto and sostenuto. So, of course, Currentzis does just the opposite. He goes, dun, 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 like that. In other words, he changes what the rhythm is, basically by cutting it short at the end of every repetition of that little module. And so the result is just the opposite of what Beethoven wanted. Instead of having the long singing line, you get short little sniglets. And so he has to break up the tune that goes on top of it into short little sniglets as well, so they fit. Oh, and also the beginning is like a super duper duper pianissimo that drops to even a super duperer duperer pianissimo. It's all so affected. It's nothing but self-regarding affectation. There isn't a simple musical phrase anywhere. Not a bit. It's absolutely an abomination. Disgusting. Disgraceful. I'm sure some people will love it because it's different. It's definitely different. It happens to be the opposite of what Beethoven wrote, but who cares? It's different. It's Currentzis showing how different he can be. That must be, I think, the church on top of the Greek temple. The love on top of the architecture, or the architecture on top of the love, or the love-architecture, or I don't know, whatever he's talking about. It makes no sense. Then we get to the Scherzo. The Scherzo is probably the best movement in the symphony from the point of view of performance because, it's a very energetic and vivacious movement. And the only real problem with it is that typical thing he does with diminuendi at the end of every single phrase. We heard it in the first movement. We heard it in the allegretto. And now we hear it in the trio, which goes da, ba. There's a tune there. It's da-da-dum, da-da-dum. There are notes there. You don't hear them. I assume they're played. They must be there somewhere. But he rushes them to the point where you don't even hear them. It's just an absurdity. And then we get to the finale. Oh, the finale. This is absolutely the worst finale. And it really shows you how just how dim Currentzis' understanding of this. I mean, he may run around the Parthenon studying colonnades and coming up with pretentious bullshit to talk about the things about Beethoven. But the one thing he doesn't understand is sonata form. I mean, what Beethoven actually does has no effect on Currentzis? I don't know, on the consciousness of the conductor. None whatsoever. And the classic case is the motion music, the transitional music between the first subject and the second subject in this finale. Now, you know what that is. It's that repeats itself, 4 or 5 times on the way from the first subject to the second subject. Its purpose is to move. It's motion music. It's to modulate from the home key to the dominant, to the secondary key. That's what it does. But Currentzis, in order to make something special and unique of his performance, cannot let it do that. He has to make a meal of it. Every single phrase has its own separate dynamic level. He draws attention to it in the most inappropriate way, because what he does, and it's throughout this whole performance, but this is the emblematic moment. He has to make incredibly significant a moment which is of absolutely different and minimal importance, in the sense of it's not one of the principal themes. Yes, Beethoven works with it. Yes, he develops it as he does everything. But its purpose is to get us from point A to point B. So it has to move. Everything that you should do in playing that passage should increase that feeling of forward momentum to get us onto that second subject. That's the second subject, right? And it's supposed to take us there. Instead, Currentzis makes us focus on that moment, which stops it dead in its tracks. It does just the opposite of what Beethoven wants it to do. And then as we get through, the rest of the movement, we get to the coda. And the coda is the most disappointing of all. It's not just because the horns aren't great and you don't hear enough of them. It's because that volcanic coda is when the fireworks go off. It should be explosive. All of the energy, the pent-up energy that's leading into that moment, the grinding bass line when the basses are going, and everything's starting to build and build and build, and it should just be the most liberating moment in the world. No, not here. And the reason is fear. Again, Currentzis' chronic fear of Beethoven, of not being different, of not being special enough, of not allowing Beethoven to be Beethoven, of not being able to let go, to let the music achieve that orgasmic apotheosis, which is the end of this symphony, unlike any other symphony. It may be that Currentzis achieves symmetry. I couldn't care less about symmetry. I want excitement. I want power. I want exhilaration. I want to feel the emotion behind the music. I want to feel what the music is trying to express to us. Currentzis may be expressing Christian love on top of a dead temple or a colonnade I don't know what he's thinking. I don't think he knows what he's thinking. I really don't. He's only thinking that he has to do something to be different, to be unusual, to be controversial, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe it's controversial. I just think it's bad. It's bad. It's immature. It's silly. The guy needs to grow up. He needs to understand that to play this music is to allow the music to express itself, not to put your own stupid, pseudo-intellectual, pretentious BS on top of all of it. Somewhere underneath this collection of mannerisms and inhibitions, there is a Beethoven symphony struggling to emerge. And one of the wonderful things about Beethoven's music is that it is particularly antiseptic when it confronts a bullshitter. like Currentzis, like this guy. It just tells you how wrong he is at every point. And so, I know this is going to be a cycle. I know we're going to hear more from this pompously named orchestra. What is this? This is Musica Urethra. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's Tinnitus Classics' own orchestra. This is Music Aeterna. But they might as well be Musica Urethra. What's the difference? I mean, it makes no difference at all. So you get one disc with one symphony, no couplings. I know that's the old complaint, right? The food was terrible, but such small portions, But, he's doing this, everything he possibly can, to make himself out to be the most important being on the planet. And that is why he has so richly earned the Scarf of Irredeemable Chutzpah Award for this Beethoven 7th. And when it's over, what you can do is take the Scarf of Irredeemable Chutzpah and hang yourself with it. Ah! That's all this piece of crap is good for. So much for Currentzis. It's Beethoven 2, Currentzis 0. Keep on listening, folks. Take care.